All right, national championship preview. Washington versus Michigan. Chris, talk to me a little bit about the Huskies.
Man, team of destiny this year, Christian. A lot of people wrote them off. I did a couple times this year. They're still undefeated. Great win over Texas. That was a really good game. Actually, that whole weekend was a great weekend for college football in the playoffs. But Washington, man, Michael Penix, dude, came out just lights out, dude. You give this kid time, he's going to pick you apart. He's a veteran. We know that. I tell you what, Christian, I think with this game, it's going to, we saw what Michigan can do with the pass rush and what they did against Alabama. That was insane. Washington, I'm a little worried about. Can they protect Penix? If they can, I think Washington hangs around in this game. But if they don't, it could get ugly. I'm going to throw that out there. I think there's two scenarios in this game. But overall, Washington, the run game, they try to run the ball. I don't know how successful they're going to be against Michigan's defense. Michigan, to me, probably has the best defense in the country this year. You could throw Georgia up there. You could throw Alabama. You could throw Penn State. But, man, Michigan's is solid. I don't know if they've really had a bad game all year defensively. So I'm going to kick it over to you, Christian. We'll give our predictions. I'm sure we'll talk a little bit more about this national title game. But tell me about Michigan.
You know, Chris, as a Georgia fan, I want to say this, right? You know, Georgia had gotten close a couple times, and you go back to 2022, and there was something special with that team, right? It just, you could feel it in the air. I went to a couple of those games that year. They won that first, 2021, I should say. They won that first national championship in 41 years, and there was something about it. And, you know, you think about Michigan this year, and there's something about them. The defense is has been lights out all year. I mean, they've carried the team, I feel like, at points. Against Bama, I mean, they were able to do something on a huge stage in what, over the last couple of years, for Harbaugh and this team has kind of been their Achilles heel in these playoff games. They were able to go out and they lived in Alabama's backfield. They put a lot of pressure on Jalen Milroe. They were able to get him off target, I mean, at certain points of that game. They were able to bottle that run game up at certain points, I felt like. I mean, the only thing that they really could do was just run. He could just run around. He really didn't have a whole lot of chance there, right? And that's normally what Bama all year has been very elite at doing, making plays when it breaks down. We've seen him do that time and time again. But this game, Michigan's defense, they've rose to that occasion. And I've got a very strong feeling, they're going up against one of the best offensive lines in the country that Washington has this weekend, Chris, for the national championship on Monday. And it's going to be really interesting to watch how that plays out. I think that, Washington can try, as everyone's tried to do all year long, to try to make quick plays happen. But, man, Michigan, they live for it. They zig when you think they're going to zag. Going to the offensive side of the ball, I thought J.J. McCarthy, at first he didn't look all that great. But then as the game went on, he really showed me something, Chris. He rose to that occasion. Now, he was helped out by the run game. They were able to run the ball. They were able to mix up what they wanted to do on offense, and that made them a nightmare to stop. I watched Washington when they played Texas, Chris. Texas, if they weren't in a negative script all game long, they probably would have been able to run the ball. They were running the ball on them almost at will. Every time they were getting 4 or 5 yards a carry. I think if you're Michigan, you can stay in that script. They're comfortable. Even if they get behind, they are comfortable with running the ball and taking what you give them. And that's a dangerous combination. Washington's not used to that, right? They're used to playing ahead a lot of the times. So it's going to be interesting to see how these two teams kind of go together. Chris, before we start breaking this down, let me ask you this. This has to be the best matchup you could possibly ask for, right? I know obviously 75% are voting for Michigan here on the analytics is to win this game. But there's got to be a little bit of you that's saying, hey, this is going to be a great game either way, right?
Yeah, I'll add my 2 cents here. I like I said just a minute ago, that I think there is a chance for Washington to win this football game. If they could give him time, and I mean Michael Penix. Michael Penix is clearly a better quarterback than J.J. McCarthy. I think we would all agree on that. But if they can, I think Penix can put up some points and they can hang around it. And I need to see if Michigan's secondary is up to the task. Bama didn't test them at all. They didn't. The pass rush was too good. They couldn't run the ball. Bama was a one-man band with Jalen Milroe. I mean, it was Jalen Milroe, make plays for us, run the ball. That was pretty much that whole game. Now, credit Michigan's defense for that. But I'm with you. I think this matchup's going to be very, very interesting simply because you got two different types of teams, right? You got Michigan is the equivalent of bully ball. People throw that out there a lot, but I mean, they really are. They remind me of my 90s Huskers. They're going to run it at you. There's nothing you can do about it. They remind me of the early 2000 Nick Saban teams. Nobody could stop it. Michigan's been doing this pretty much the entire time under Harbaugh, and they've had a ton of success doing it. I'm with you. I'm a little worried about Washington's defense stopping the run. Blake Corum, Donovan Edwards, are elite running backs. McCarthy can run too. He's athletic when they let him loose. I'm with you, man. This is going to be very, very interesting.
I think the other thing too that might have hurt Bama was they had a ton of youth, kind of playing, right? And that's, I don't want to say it doesn't have playoff experience, but you could say that, right? They had a lot of young guys playing that haven't really played a ton of meaningful or big games. I mean, there's some big games when you play at the University of Alabama. You expect that. But, I mean, Jalen Milroe, right? We know this was obviously his first year to start. I think last year he started against, Texas A&M and played a little bit against Arkansas. And he was able to get that. That was a win. But we know Texas A&M hasn't been what they've normally been, right? I mean, running back. Last year they lost Jahmyr Gibbs to the NFL. So you had McClellan stepping up. You had Haynes as another one. There's a lot of, Michigan has more experience, I think, in that game. Washington, to me, also, they've got some experience. I mean, Penix has played a ton of football. Johnson, he got banged up, but he's coming back. He's going to have some big time, games underneath him. So does Adenise. I mean, they've got. I'll tell you this right now, Chris. What makes this matchup so interesting to me is I don't think Michigan has a single wide receiver that could start at the University of Washington over who they've got right now. On the flip side of that, I don't think Washington maybe has a single defender that could probably go and start at the University of Michigan. And I know that's going to sound crazy, but two things can be true here, right?
Yeah, I'm with you on that. I mean, Washington's receivers are elite. Odunze, Polk, those guys are great route runners. They're incredible wide receivers. Michigan, yeah, and a lot of people are going to say in defense, they're going to say, well, Christian, Michigan hasn't had to throw the ball, right? And Michigan's not, but Jim Harbaugh, even when you watched him in the NFL or Stanford, wherever the hell he's been, he's never been a big component of throwing the ball a ton of times. It's not what he does. He's an old school guy, going to ground and pound, and I'm with you on the experience thing. Michigan's got a ton of 2, 3, and 4 year starters on this team. They have more experience than anybody in the playoffs did. I think you could add up the other 3 teams, to be honest with you. Michigan's been around for a long time, Christian. You know that with Jim Harbaugh, but I do agree with you.
We had talked about it a little bit, and we're getting ready to get into our score predictions here. Before we do that, talk to me a little bit. How do you see this game playing out? Do you see Michigan taking hold of it? Do you see it being a back-and-forth contest, blowout, close game? What do you see here?
I mean, ultimately in my heart, and I thought about this a lot, it's a lot of people are telling me Michigan by 14. I think when you look at this, and I've watched a ton of Michigan football this year, being from the Big Ten, I think Michigan gets up early in this game. I think it's going to take a little bit for Washington to adjust to Michigan's ground game. I mean, they're just tough. Nobody's been really able to stop it. Bama did a good job in the second half until that last drive. You know what I mean? I could see, I guess more than anything, I see Michigan getting up, Christian, early, whether it's by 10, maybe 10-3, 14-3, something like that. But I do feel like Washington's been this team that has played in so many close games. They've been down a couple times this year. Oregon, teams like that. Washington State at one time. I truly feel that this game is going to be close at the end, Christian. I do. I want to hear your thoughts on it, how you kind of see this playing out.
I see it kind of like the Texas-Washington game almost, but I think, it's kind of flipped a little bit, where I think Michigan can get in there and put themselves in positive game scripts, maybe pull ahead, in that second to third quarter there. And but if there's one team that can kind of come back and cut a deficit really quick, it's Washington. And I think that the final score is going to probably be a little closer than what what the actual outcome will be, right? I think it'll be maybe a one-possession game, kind of like you were saying there at the end. Washington might have a chance to win it, but I think ultimately, I'll jump into my score prediction here. All right. I think Michigan wins it 41-34.
Holy shit, you got a ton of points. I think it's going to be a little more low-scoring game because Michigan in the success on the ground running the ball. I'm a little bit off with your score there. I'm going to say Michigan 28, Washington 24. I think it's close. I think Penix leads a drive at the end, puts them within a one-possession game. It kind of comes down at the end of that fourth quarter.